A very good morning to you once again, and welcome to the program reaching you live from our studios at Souk News Television. And straight away, we'll go into insight in what made the news. But before then, we still go. These are the three musketeers, like Evelyn normally calls us. What does musketeers mean? Is the positive
we should ask Evelyn, because she did the christening.
Yeah, because the last time I heard what that was when that movie was involved.
A Nollywood movie.
Yeah, not just that. That movie, The Good, the
bad and the ugly.
Then I used to hear that word being bandied here and there. Musketeers. So I think it was associated to, is it hooliganism or brigandage?
I originally was here.
Using it in the positive sense.
No, so since you're not very sure and you're not comfortable with it, we need to conduct a new naming ceremony.
Exactly. Well, welcome once again. Let's dive into it. President Tinubu increases 2025 budget from 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira, citing additional revenues generated by key government agencies. That's an increase of about 4.5 trillion naira. Doc, before we commence the program, you were expressing satisfaction that you were delighted in this development.
Yeah, there's something that excites better than when people are transparent. And that for me is how I see it. We had to pass this course several times, where of course money comes into government coffers. They are not budgeted, but they are expended. And it is important that every single penny that gets into government coffer in a fiscal year, plans on how to use it had to be in place. And I think that just speaks to transparency, and it also speaks to the issue of accountability. And it's not increasing it because there are pressure to say, okay, we must do XYZ, but say we could have done XYZ based on the medium-term economic framework. But this is a constraint because we need to borrow some more money, and now we're having more money coming in from the NDAs. And so why not let's scale up a little bit, especially when issues again arises. But here on this table yesterday, we were talking about the Central Development Commission. Of course, it's like the approval had escaped the budget. But I think this is again an opportunity to factor that in. And then some budgetary allocation can get into that space. And at least people can account for what government is earning and how the monies are spent.
I have two very strong concerns. Previously, when we presented the 49.7 trillion naira budget, it was itemized that 13 trillion naira will be for budget deficit. And now that we have 4.5 trillion naira increase, Blessing, do you think that will lead to the depreciation of
reducing the deficit?
Yes, reducing the deficit, which will be good for the economy.
It depends on what the president wants to budget that 4.5 trillion naira for. So if there are new elements coming into the budget, like the North Central Development Commission, that may mean that part of that money will go for it. And maybe other things that weren't budgeted for, if they are coming into the budget now, so the budget deficit might remain. Otherwise, I think that would close the gap. And it will be a good thing. So it means that there will be less borrowing, and it saves the country a whole lot. I'm happy that revenue is generated, and the revenue is part of what makes the budget. So it's a good one for government. Like the past where more borrowings were done as against the revenue that we have generated. So I think it's kudos to Federal Inland Revenue Service, kudos to Nigerian Customs Service. They've been generating revenue before, and I think that if the other ports in the country are working, that would also add up to what comes from the ports. So, but this one is just majorly from the Lagos port, and that's a lot of money. So it depends on what the president wants to do. But there is a promise that the bill with the budget rather will be passed by the end of February, which is still not too good. I think there should be works to ensure that we return back to the cycle that by November at the latest by December, the budget for the incoming year is already ready and passed. So the budget starts running from the start of the year. We're already 2 months behind. So I hope that they're able to meet that deadline that they've set for by February ending, and it doesn't get into March. So that would mean that the first quarter of the year goes on without us having the budget passed.
Okay, I think some other persons who were saying the government, most especially this delay for 2 months into the 2025 budget, is not a practice that we should continue to adopt. Mr. Paul Alaje, who is an economic expert himself, was also saying that 2 months, all the government needs to do, as in collaboration with the National Assembly, they were supposed to make sure that the budget cycle we stick to it and make sure that we pass the budget. And if there is need for any addition, there is nothing wrong with supplementary budget. At least the government have from January to at least November or October thereabout to generate and bring forth another reason, or is present a supplementary budget before Parliament so they can approve, and hope it will not be looked at that we are not really very, very decisive in the way and manner we want to make some spendings. But Doc, what does this delayed passage of the budget is not going to have any consequence?
Yeah, but I don't think the delay was deliberate. There was a whole lot to be done in terms of adjusting all the parameters that were to determine how the forecast of the budget was. Don't forget that the current medium-term economic framework that is used in preparing the budget, which of course lapsed this year, was prepared by the previous administration. And that's what the government has been relying on to set its own budget. And therefore, there was a need for the government to prepare its own framework for another 3 years to determine how 2025, 2026, and 2027 budget is going to look like. So that took a lot of time, and so MDAs were not through with preparation of budget because the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Economic Planning had not finished their work in preparing that document. And of course, it's also a legal document that the National Assembly needed to endorse. And because of that delay in preparation of the midterm framework, the MDA submitted their budget late, and then of course the compilation came late, and that was why you find that National Assembly would not be able to consider that budget before the end of the last fiscal year. But in 2024, the budget was passed on time, well before this happened, and I think we could take this as one-off because the natural budget cycle had some challenges, and of course twice we saw that the National Assembly had to extend the life cycle of the 2023 budget and of course the life cycle of the 2024 budget because of some of these peculiarities.
I really hope that we will be able to do away with this in the before the end of February, like the government has said, given the fact that, remember yesterday we were talking about some of the key critical agencies that have not been able to come to the floor before the committee to defend the budget of the ministries.
No. I think that is audit. It's not. That has nothing to do with budget. Those key agencies that didn't come, that is for the audit query, and that's quite different from budget. So there are two different things, and I think there are no resistance. I know, for example, FRS had come to the National Assembly to defend their budget. So we can see that there's not so much complaint right now because everybody seems to be complying because the president himself needs the budget to be passed because it's going to be the real document that we're going to use. But because of the extension really of the 2024 budget, the lifespan of the 2024 budget, definitely we're going to also see that 2025 budget will likely going to be extended because two budgets are running pari passu as we speak.
Well, for me, what I don't really want to overflow this, the 2020 or the 2021 query by the Auditor General was based on how the budget of those years were prosecuted, which they found some inconsistencies in it. And if the 2025 budget is here and they wanted those issues that were inconsistent in the previous budget to be straightened out, and these the heads of these ministries, political appointees of these ministries, are not doing the needful, I just hope, like Doctor said, it's not going to affect. I don't know if you have.
No. You should understand what I mentioned this yesterday. You just understand how government works and how government functions. The audit queries for, like I said, the Auditor General of the Federation just released their data for the 2021 budget. National Assembly has not considered that. The one that they are currently considering is the 2020 budget. Now, the 2020 budget has nothing to do with 2025 budget. What they are asking is that audit raise queries on some expenditures in the budget of that year. It's not as if the
what about items in those budget if they reflect?
No, that is not it. It has nothing to do with the preparation for 2025 budget. What happens is that you raise a query to say this spending was not done. It's not as if that National Assembly need it to pass the 2025 budget. Okay. In short, as a matter of fact, they have finished defending. That's what I'm saying to you. Adedeji was in the floor of the Senate to defend his budget for 2025. And of course, that has gone. It's not as if that they are considering the query based on why they want to do 2025.
I think what Doctor is saying is that, you know, there's a Public Accounts Committee at the National Assembly where the Accountants General of the Federation submits a report to them, and then they go through to know how these funds, for instance, the 2025 budget, so when funds are released to MDEs, so how they are appropriated. Maybe by the time that report has been submitted to the Accountants General of the Federation, and then it looks at it, they need to audit how was this money expended. So the Public Accounts Committee calls the agency or the MDA in question to say there is some discrepancy between what was disbursed and what was appropriated and what you disbursed at the end of the day. Why is this so? But why I have an issue with it is the delay, and which is a accumulation of different factors. One, the delay in the MDA submitting their reports to the Accountant General, because it's when the Accountant General gets the report that he can then forward to the National Assembly. So how is it that we're in 2025 and we're still talking about the expenditures of 2020? So there's a lot of delay, and I think the MDAs need to do better in preparing their books and in submitting their books, so these things can work early, because that's why there's room for denial. There's room for people to say, I'm not liable, I wasn't there at the time this happened, I'm not the person you should be speaking to. But if it is done quickly, if we're talking about 2024 for now, in 2025, then it's easy to know what actually happened. The facts come in easily, and it's easy to detect where something had gone wrong. But when years have piled up, you know, it gives room for a lot of things to be concealed, and it doesn't help for some of those mistakes or some of those discrepancies to be corrected so that they don't keep recurring. So I think the National Assembly needs to prevail on the Accountant General of the Federation, to prevail on the accountants of the chief accountants of these MDAs, to make sure their books are ready on time so that this audit can be done timely. The delay in the audit does not speak well.
Yeah, but I think the reason for the delay is the fact that, take for example, we have over 1,000 agencies of government, and these 1,000 agencies of government, they're going to bring Ghana must go of documents, of course, which of course the people in the Auditor General office had to scan through and to see whether everything, all the invoices that were sent, they all align and things like that. And this is where people are actually speaking that if we have to make progress in what we do, we have to deploy technology to help us.
Exactly, e-governance.
See, because if, for example, all the accounting processes are done electronically, it is easy, even now in the age of AI, to be able to use AI to do the analysis that you can actually see some of all these things on the dashboard. That if there are infractions, you will see it flagged out. So this is the challenge in terms of preparation. So you can imagine that every unit is sending their own invoices that they have accumulated over the year, and they're sending it to their own internal audit. Then, of course, the internal auditors have done their work. Then they expect an external auditor to come, look at what they have done, and then before they pass this on straight to the Auditor General's office. So, and I think that is what is actually responsible for the delay. And the only way out for me is that we have to adopt e-governance, such that if we program our procurement very well and expenditure framework, as people are entering invoice number and the rest of the thing, the system itself is able to detect if there are issues that needs to be cleared. And then, of course, all you just need to do, print out a copy, a clean copy of the balance sheet, and then, of course, you don't need to spend too much time doing that. But right now, we still do so many things manually.
I think it is deliberate. Yeah. The insistence, not actually insistence, but staying the old way when there are technologies that can help. Even for small organizations, they don't do things manually anymore because times have changed. So I think for MDAs, if they make it a priority, because they understand what these delays cost, if they make it a priority, it will happen.
The problem is not with the MDA. You see, and that's the problem with governments. And that's why people talk about when you do private sector, you can decide, wake up one morning and say, oh, I don't want to do this and I want to go to this place. But if you have to do that with government, then laws have to change. And these are very serious issues, legal implications of transiting from one system to another. And because of the way our own our system is wired, where there's a whole lot of suspicion, where there's a whole lot of trust deficit, what you see is that many people are looking at situations to say, oh, is this in our favor? I need to go consult with my constituency and the rest of it. So the bureaucracy actually is the issue. And like I always will ask when I have meetings with public servants, is bureaucracy really still necessary? Why was bureaucracy in the first place? Bureaucracy happened because there were inefficiency and, of course, there were indiscipline. So the two factors that actually led to the evolution of bureaucracy is inefficiency of government and indiscipline. Now, the question to ask really, in our own space, are we now efficient? Are we now disciplined?
Okay.
But if you look at it objectively, you will still see in our environment, those two factors are still very prevalent, because we are having civil service full of inefficiency, and you are still having civil service full of indiscipline. And so they need to put this thing manually in place, because people are also thinking that if you go E and nobody see it, and even with the way we are christened all across the globe and the smartness in able to break into system, that government could be run down one day. Now, these are all considerations that people put into account while they're thinking of deploying the e-governance model.
I think the e-governance, for me, should be the way forward. There is no reason why we will have the Ministry of Information and Digital Economy or the Ministry of Communications, and we are unable to move. I don't think it requires the Act of Parliament for us to make laws that we are moving. We are going to start have a backup system for the paper system. We don't need an act of parliament for that. It's just a normal civil service procedure that should govern. However, if we are going to do that, we could start thinking back. Some accountant general, let's even think about some of the inconsistencies and the fraud that has been committed. We remember there was this time the DG of, is it the DG? There's a pension fraud where someone, carted away the money that was meant for pensioners in this country. And he was being interrogated by the law enforcement agencies. And before we know, we got to hear that he escaped through one of the borders in the northern part of the country. There have been the last two accountant general of the Federation, too. They were somewhat embroiled in this act of fraudulent activity. So if we have a backup system where we have things, position in the system. You copy your superior, you are dealing with a document, the accountant, the chief accounting officer, the chief operating officer, including the chief executive officer, to the permanent secretary, to the political appointee, the minister or the commissioner of that particular commission, or the DG of that parastatal knows, then I don't think it's something that we will be able to bypass, because if that's the reason why sometimes you heard that some government offices got burnt, and it's a specific office. The account,
and when it gets burned,
the account
you
office,
can't
you
present
can't
paper anymore.
produce any paper. So what are we going to rely on? We are supposed to rely on the e-governance and the infrastructure that e-governance has provided us. Remember that in Diziani Alison's Madueke's saga, where the World Bank or the United States is saying that they are going to repatriate some of these funds, a part of the fund was said we're going to use that to rejig the Nigerian judiciary. What are we rejigging? Are we just going to build a physical infrastructure? Are we not going to bring in the e-governance and how to transit from the normal paper legal way of filing the legal suits? Fine, even if we still adopt the paper in our transition, we are not transiting completely and neglecting paper. The e-governance should be a backup so that anytime there is an evidence to present, and I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, but you see, that is the point. I keep saying some of all these things because you need to be within the environment where some of these things happen for you to be able to take a position to say, yes, it's not as easy as you think about it, because there is a whole lot of hurdle that you have to actually get through. Then, for example, as sophisticated as United States of America is, you remember when their pipeline was compromised by Russia, and they demanded a huge sum of money. That's a very sophisticated and advanced economy. Now, if you look at all the economy in the world and see the way people, if you go to Canada today and see the kind of crime, huge crime that is happening within their system, that are perpetrated on a daily basis, and then you are now talking about an environment where there are no basic infrastructure on the ground to even monitor these things. That today light is off, tomorrow there is no anything. So these are the considerations. It's not as if these people deliberately do not want to see things work, but you're also looking at the factors the constraining factors that is making the applications of some of these processes difficult. So people are saying, yes, it's good, it's fantastic. Don't also forget that we are having a whole lot of people who are, especially now, at the top echelons of government, who themselves, maybe some of them can't even operate email, some of them cannot even operate.
So that's
computer.
where retraining comes in. I don't think their level of skill in digital word should, or their low digital skill should be what will set back.
Yeah, but this is
the ministries of the country. They can upskill.
This is what people are talking about. Take, for example, in an age of AI, you find that country like Japan, country like Singapore, budgeted huge sum of money last year and in this year's budget to see how to retrain people who are 40 years and above. And of course, in language learning, once people get past some certain age, the ability to catch up is difficult. So these are the constraints. So there are things that people are deploying gradually. About 2 days ago, we spoke about the single window. The single window is a form of e-governance that is syncing now custom.
Great.
Yeah, syncing Corporate Affairs Commission, syncing FRIs.
Standard Organization of Nigeria.
NAFDAC and all.
Into one single platform where people can actually verify. So the process is gradual, but it's not something that can happen all overnight. It's not to say that everywhere in public service, everything is done manually. But having that integration where people are using a common application is one of the big challenge. Even where government has deployed for payment, for example, the gift means, many civil servants also find challenge in terms of its use, because sometimes we're loading something and you're very taking forever for some of all these things to load. And these, of course, you have an era where I said it here that day when say, oh, you apply for travel license and they tell you that their network is down, and for 3 months network is down. What are you going to do? when network is down. So these are the challenge of infrastructure that people are thinking about. So I always say here, it's not as if that we have people in public service who are very dull and cannot think.
No.
But the truth of the matter is that they are also faced with a lot of constraints that they are dealing with on a daily basis. If you go to the Bureau for Public Service Reform, give that to Dr. Arabi, a lot has been done to see how we can scale up in this regard. But dealing with this constraint is not something you do overnight. And they are working gradually to see that. I was happy.
I think that gradual step they are taking is at snail speed.
No.
It's
not as snail.
It is at snail speed.
I remember that in March last year, while the Public Account Committee was being inaugurated, and some of all these issues were raised. About 3 or 4 months ago, the committee chairman for public accounts, Salam, told me that they have done procurement and they have set up their own committee platform where all documents for audit are now done electronically. So they don't expect that any MDA is coming out with Ghana must go. So those things had to go. So, but what I'm saying is that the measures are put in place. We are gradually moving because we cannot get out, we cannot avoid it because technology is where the world is. And if we must sync with the other worlds, we have to be very careful so that we don't run down in one single day.